is through each other. So this salvation, this spiritual transformation that God wants for us, that is possible, is not solely some kind of individualistic relationship with God, where it's just me and him working this out. But the reality is that my brother is part of my salvation, that his own salvation and spiritual growth is tied up with mine, and that in a very deep sense, I can't be saved without my brother also being saved. And so there's this common destiny, and there's this great blessing we're given that God doesn't just do all the work for us, but invites us into that same labor and work, right? Into that same harvest. And so we get to be a part of the process of being a means of salvation and grace to other people. And so one of the ways this comes out, which Paul mentions about his spiritual fatherhood to all the spiritual children he's writing to in Corinthians, where he says, he commands them, he's instructing them to imitate him. And so this is also sort of and maybe this is encouraging and also a bit terrifying, but a reminder of the influence and power and importance that we have in other people's lives. We come together to pray together, to fast together, because it's easier to do those things together. And when we see, the virtue of somebody else, we see the way in which someone else's character excels, that encourages us, other people inspire us, it gives us sort of the strength to press harder and work harder in our own spiritual life. And when other people are lax, or other people sort of are just sloppy about their character and their virtue, it can be very demotivating for us if we're surrounded by other people like that. We very much become like the people we decide that we're going to surround ourselves with. And so then it becomes much easier to sort of make excuses, right, for ourselves and for where we're at. And so all of us are interconnected, right? Like all of our spiritual lives are connected, and when I grow and take steps forward and make the right kind of sacrifices I need to make, that has a positive impact on other people around me. And the reality is that, Paul says this, imitate me. This is precisely what the saints are, right? They're people that the church has lifted up, right, who are worthy of imitation, right? But in a more common sense, all of us, right, all of us are referred to in the liturgy as saints, right? Like when I come out with the gospel and I bless the threshold here of the royal doors, I say, blessed is the entrance of thy saints, right? And so who are the saints? It's all of you, right? That's what the saints refer to. And so in this sense, everybody has this role to play of becoming a type of person whom other people ought to imitate, right? And that's the role so we all have for each other, is growing in that way so that we can be worthy of imitation for each other. And some people the church lifts up or holds up, whether it's like a priest who's your father confessor, or it's some great saint, right? Or it's some elderly person in the church who has lived a good and godly life. Those are all people who we can look to for imitation. This same principle of God not doing all the work, but making us part of the process and not finishing it for us without us being a part of that. I mean, it's very much just like when you're parenting and you want your kids to learn to do things for themselves, because you don't want to be serving them your whole life. Right? It's very similar in this spiritual sense with God. We see that when the disciples come and they couldn't cast out that demon, right? And then Jesus says this kind of only comes out where prayer and fasting. So this is a reminder that there is some spiritual work, right, which we can't just say, hey, God, fix this for me, right? You're never going to get an answer to prayer for some of those things. Because what you need is not for God to swoop in like some overprotective mother and rescue you from your own life and choices. What you and I need is to grow up and work to fix these problems ourselves in cooperation with God. And so, what this means is that we are given the ability, we're given this great opportunity to not just be servants of God, but like Jesus says to his disciples in the gospel, I no longer call you servants, but I call you friends. And so that lifting up to this higher level of dignity, which is also an elevation of what's expected of us spiritually. Not because God needs it, right? Or because we should feel ashamed or guilty about it necessarily, but because it's what is best for us, right? You know, there's nothing, I mean, we run into people like this, adults who are sort of like, I don't know, somewhere in the age of like 13, they stopped developing, you know, and they're just very immature. And it's embarrassing, right, to see an adult that acts like a children when they should be fully grown. But the same thing is true spiritually for us, right? That we are expected to grow up spiritually, to cooperate with God in this work, because that's what's best for us, and that's what we should want. And so we're given this reminder, right, that, you know, the real answer to prayer isn't just getting that problem fixed that we want, right? The real answer to prayer is like Paul, where he talks about the thorn in the side, right? Where he asked 3 times for God to remove it, and God didn't. And the message from God was that my grace is sufficient for you. The real answer to prayer is not changes in our circumstances, but changes in ourselves. Lord Jesus Christ.
Lord, forever.